The night I found out, I made dinner. Pasta, the kind he likes. Carbonara, the real way, with pancetta and a little too much pepper. I set the table. I poured wine. I sat across from him and listened to him talk about his day. He had no idea I'd spent the last 4 hours building a spreadsheet that would end his career. Let me take you back to a Saturday morning 6 weeks earlier, because that's where this actually starts. I was doing the monthly budget review, something I did every month. Coffee going, laptop open, nothing dramatic. I was reconciling our joint checking account when I noticed a pattern I hadn't seen before. Small transfers, $180 here, $210 there, $105 the month before that, all going to the same external account. All labeled Miss, all on the 3rd of the month, like clockwork for 2 years. 24 transfers, just over $4,600 total. I sat with that number for a long time. $4,600, moved in amounts small enough to look like noise, on a schedule precise enough to be intentional. I didn't say anything. I just opened a new tab and started digging. Her name was Kelsey. I found that out by the end of the day. The account was in her name, a personal account, not a business, not a charity. Nothing that would explain why my husband had been sending her money every month for 2 years. She was 34. She lived in Austin. She'd gone to college with my husband, which I knew, because he'd mentioned her exactly once. Just a girl from school, 4 years ago when her name came up at a party. And I asked, just a girl from school. I went to her Instagram. She posted a lot. Brunch photos, workout content, apartment stuff. She'd recently moved somewhere nicer, she said, with better light for her plants. There was a photo of her new couch, a West Elm sectional, she'd tagged it. $1,800. I recognized the color. I'd looked at that exact couch 6 months ago and decided we couldn't afford it right now. I closed the tab. I went to the kitchen. I started making carbonara. You need to understand something about me. I am not a woman who acts from anger. I learned that from watching my mother. She was a reactor, always, and her whole life she lost things she could have kept because she moved before she thought. Jobs, cases, people. She led with the feeling and let the other person recover. I was not going to let my husband recover. I spent the next 3 weeks being the best wife I have ever been. Dinners. Weekend trips. I laughed at his jokes. I asked about his work. I listened to him talk about the Henderson account and the quarterly projections and some disagreement he was having with a colleague named Phil. Every night after he fell asleep, I worked. I documented everything. Every transfer, every date, every amount. I pulled 2 years of bank statements and built a complete picture. I contacted a financial attorney, not a divorce attorney. Not yet. Just someone who could tell me what I was looking at legally. He told me that depending on how the accounts were structured, what Marcus had done might constitute financial fraud. I asked him to define might. He said, "Send me what you have." I sent him the spreadsheet. He called back in 2 hours. He said, "This is thorough." I said, "I know." Marcus's company had an annual client dinner every March, black tie, downtown hotel, the kind of event where he spent 3 weeks beforehand reminding me what to wear and how to act, and who the important people were. His boss would be there, the senior partners, the 3 clients his entire year depended on impressing. He'd been taking me to this dinner for 6 years. He knew I was good at it, charming, warm, remembered everyone's names. He always introduced me with this particular pride, like I was something he'd built. This year I wore the green dress he hated, the one I bought for myself 2 Christmases ago that he said was a little much. I looked incredible. We arrived. We worked the room. I smiled at his boss, David, and David's wife, and the 3 clients and their partners. I refilled my champagne. I waited. Marcus was mid-sentence, something about Q1 projections, when I touched his arm, the way I always do when I want him to pause. "Sorry to interrupt," I said. "I just want to tell you something while everyone's here." He turned to me with that smile, the proud one. "I've been so grateful," I said, looking right at him, "for how generous you are, the way you take care of people." I paused. "I found out recently you've been sending $200 a month to an old college friend. For 2 years." I tilted my head. I thought that was worth mentioning. The table went very quiet. His boss looked at him. His boss's expression was the one I'd been waiting for. Not scandalized, not angry yet, just calculating. The expression of a man who has just filed something away. Marcus's face went through 4 things in about 2 seconds. I watched all of them. It's not what it sounds like," he said. And his voice was completely wrong. Too fast. Too high. "I'm sure it isn't," I said pleasantly. "That's why I've sent the documentation to your compliance department, just to make sure everything's properly explained." I picked up my champagne. "Enjoy dinner," I said. I left the hotel at 8:47 p.m. I drove to my sister's apartment, where a bag I'd packed 3 days earlier was waiting in her guest room closet. I did not go home that night. I did not go home for a long time after that. The compliance investigation took 5 weeks. What they found confirmed what my attorney had already told me. The account structure, the regularity of the transfers, the fact that he'd categorized them as business expenses on 2 separate tax filings, all of it pointed to the same conclusion. He didn't just send money to Kelsey. He wrote it off. He lost the Henderson account. He lost the 2 other clients who'd been at that table. He resigned before the firm could decide what to do with him formally, which his attorney apparently advised, though I heard later that it didn't help as much as he'd hoped. Kelsey. I don't know what happened to Kelsey. I don't think about Kelsey very much. She was the symptom, not the disease. As for me, I have a new apartment. Morning light. I finally bought the couch. The last time Marcus called me, after the attorneys, after the papers, after everything, he said, "You didn't have to do it that way." I thought about that for a second. "You're right," I said. "I could have just cried in the kitchen, but you would have recovered from that." I let the silence sit. "You didn't give me a reason to be quiet," I said, "so I wasn't." I hung up. Some people think the scariest thing you can do to someone who's wronged you is explode, make a scene, fall apart. The scariest thing is to be completely calm, to wait, to know exactly where you're going to be standing when the floor gives way beneath them, and be wearing the right dress when it happens. You can do that. You just have to stop reacting and start thinking. This is broken vows.